The Bengals are back to work, and so am I. Let's get to it. Hi, hello, and welcome in to the Ball Don't Lie podcast, episode number 200. Yes, episode number 200, kind of. Last year I did all the training camp episodes and I labeled those as like bonus episodes. So we're well beyond 200. There was one episode that I had to remove for some sort of copyright reason. So we've done a lot of different episodes over the years. Somewhere along the way, we passed 200. This is officially number 200 based off the way I've labeled them. And this year, all the training camp ones are considered a part of the next in the chronological order of the podcast. So, you know what? Let's just call it episode number 200. If you're listening, thank you for being here. If you've been here from episode number 1, Lord help you. You've had so much patience over the years. And I hear a lot of people, like, honestly say that they like this podcast, they enjoy it. That means a lot to me because it's just kind of my own little thing. And I try to make it a little bit different from who I am and what I am and what we do on the air. I just try to make it simple. I try to make it short and sweet. And I try to give you as much information and maybe a little bit of a perspective or a thought that you hadn't seen before. I haven't been as personal this in recent months, I guess. That will change, I'm sure, but that's just kind of, football and life and all that. And sometimes I don't always feel like mixing them or talking about them. And also, things have been going pretty smoothly, so I don't have too much to complain about in my life. But anyways, 200 episodes is a big deal. I'm really thankful. I continue to see the podcast grow. I don't know. I don't. I don't know. It's cool, and I appreciate it, and I like doing it. And I've gotten into like a groove with the way that I do it, the way that I record it, the way that I post it, and all that stuff. And I hope that people like it and continue to listen to it and appreciate it. And I hope it continues to grow. So, anyways, let's get that over with. Okay, so today was practice number 12 for the Bengals in training camp. That's where I'm going to start because the last time we talked, it was prior to the Lions preseason game last Thursday. I think it was Tuesday that we talked on the 11th of August. That was the Bengals' last practice prior to the Lions preseason game. They've had 2 practices since. They practiced on Saturday and they practiced on Sunday, which is today, August the 16th. Is that today's date? It is. And then they are back in action Tuesday for what Zach Taylor says will be a long and difficult practice. And then on Thursday, they welcome in the Chicago Bears for a joint practice before playing Chicago on Saturday in preseason game number 2. We'll get to all of that coming up in just a little bit. Let's start with my takeaways from practice today at Paycor Stadium. I actually got to go. I don't normally get to go to training camp practices much anymore just because of my schedule and the schedule that the team has switched to. But I did have a chance to go today. Always love going down to those practices. I missed going to Georgetown as a kid and going to practices with my dad and being up close and getting autographs and all that. And so I obviously view it in a much different lens now because of what I do for do for work. And it's cool to see it that way as well and just kind of pick up on little stuff. And so that was kind of my thing today. I didn't know what the practice was going to be like because I knew that they had just practiced the day before. I knew that they have a long practice coming Tuesday, but I also know there was an off day that is scheduled for tomorrow. And I also know that there's a big practice coming up with the Chicago Bears. So the big takeaways from today's Bengals practice: situations. It was a big situational day for the Bengals offense, defense, and special teams. Let's start with the injuries. No injuries for T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, but neither one of them participated in practice on Sunday. Seemed to be a veteran rest day for those guys who are going to get a lot of work over the next couple of days going into this weekend against Chicago. And so they did not practice. Brian Cook and Dax Hill also did not practice, but I had a good view of them on the rehab field. They were out on the field doing a lot of drills, running sprints at one point. They both looked to be comfortable running those sprints and appeared to be at full speed, and they were working up a sweat for sure. So those guys didn't look overly concerned or frustrated or anything like that from what I saw of them on the rehab field. I think the Bengals are just being overly cautious with those soft tissue injuries and aren't trying to rush those guys back. I also saw Shamar Stewart out there. Now, he was not on the field. He was just in tennis shoes. He is still coming back from that hyperextended knee. He was doing some rope drills and he was spending some time on the stationary bike. He went through a process of that repeatedly and was actually working out with the trainer. I think Nick Cosgray was out there with him breaking it down. So uh, Shamar much less further along than the other two, I would say, based off what I saw. But both of them, both sets, Brian Cook and um, Dax Hill. I wanted to say BJ Hill, more on BJ in a minute, and Shamar Stewart all over there on the practice field, rehab field. Meanwhile, BJ Hill did get cleared to practice. His first day of practice was on Saturday. BJ was back out there again today with the Bengals defense and those defensive line rotation. Might be the type of day that BJ could have off on Tuesday if they have him on a ramp up plan as well. We'll see. But BJ looked like BJ in the practices that we've seen so far. All right. So the big thing I noticed today was it was all about situational stuff. And in team drills, we didn't obviously have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, so we didn't really see much of DJ Turner as well. So you got basically the second group of wide receivers against the second group of cornerbacks and safeties. And so your starting safeties were Kyle Duggar and Jordan Battle. Your starting receivers were Andre Yoshivas, Mike Gesicki, Eric All, Colby Young. That was the main receiving group. So the first team period started with the Bengals backed up inside their own 5-yard line, and immediately Joe Burrow was able to draw the defense off sides and get a free 5 yards. They also, multiple times in this set, were in an I formation with Eric All as the fullback position, typically in an I formation. And Eric All would move around, he would motion, he would go out for a pass, he would block. There was a lot of different things that Eric All did from that kind of H-back, fullback type of position. I think that's an interesting wrinkle that the Bengals are throwing in and something that will be fascinating to watch because you obviously have a guy like Drew Sample, you have a guy like Mike Gesicki. You're not going to put Gesicki in the backfield most of the time, but I do think it's noteworthy that Eric All being in the backfield is, again, part of the evolution of this Bengals offense. And in that backed up drill, they almost exclusively went under center. They went a lot of under center play action. They completed a pass to Drew Sample, completed a pass to Colby Young, completed passes to Mike Gesicki. So altogether, the offense looked pretty solid in that opening series, which was getting out of your own end zone, basically, and moving the ball. First team offense definitely won that first team period against the first team defense. So then fast forward to the second team period. The Bengals were working on their 2-minute drill and trying to get as far down the field as they could, clock the ball, spike it, have Evan McPherson come on and kick a field goal. Bengals offense looked like the Bengals offense in this drill, even without T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Joe shotgun, empty most of the time, or would have a running back by his side, was able to get the ball out quickly, had a nice completion across the middle to Tanner Hudson, another nice completion to Colby Young. Bengals dumped one off to Chase Brown for good yardage. Bengals got into opponent territory, spiked the ball. Evan McPherson comes in, kicks the field goal, and they go home. Practice finished, by the way, with Evan McPherson kicking multiple field goals. I think he missed a 45-yarder that drifted to the left, and he also, I think he made every other kick he made, including a 56-yarder to end practice. Some of the other situational stuff the Bengals were working on were they were doing some stunts with their punt defensive line. So how they would stunt against the center when the center would snap the ball, they were working on that. They also had the emergency long snappers working on practice today, which would be Cam Grandy and Tanner Hudson. You might remember Tanner Hudson came in week 1 against Pittsburgh a couple of years ago. Did not go well for that extra point that was supposed to win them the game. Either way, that was some of the situational stuff. They were also working on if you're backed up trying to punt and you're just going to take a safety or you're trying to kill time, Ryan Rico would take the snap and kind of run around, and they were working on how to block that to give him as much time. So a lot of situational stuff, to say the least, for the Bengals in practice today. All right, let's move on now to phase two of the podcast, the part about Thursday's preseason game against the Detroit Lions. Bengals end up winning this game 16-14. Starters got a couple of drives. Defensive starters got a couple of drives. Didn't have a full slate of defensive starters because of the injuries and also the Bengals being a little bit precautious. I think Dexter Lawrence played 3 plays. Jonathan Allen played 3 plays, got those guys out of there. Really didn't give them a good look. And they don't need to. And I have no problem with those guys not playing significantly in the preseason game. I don't know how much we're going to see them play at all the rest of the preseason. I think this joint practice will kind of determine how much, if anybody plays at all, against the Bears. And then obviously what they'll look like going to Philly prior to the first game of the season in September. So my overall takeaways from that game were you could tell that the Bengals offense was still very much working on under center play action. It was under center run, under center play action, under center pass. There was a nice 16-yard completion to Jamar Chase in one of those passes. There was one where Joe Burrow got hit and sacked that he just held onto the ball too long. It was a 2-man route where it looked like the depth of the route was not necessarily in line with the drop back that Joe Burrow had. The timing looked a little bit off between him and Jamar Chase on that. And so he waited and waited and waited and didn't throw it and ultimately got sacked. That was a sack that I think was more or less on Joe Burrow than anyone else. They did bring a stunt. Dalton Reisner was a little late to it, and because of that, they were able to get through and sack Joe Burrow. But I think mostly that sack was on Joe Burrow. There was one other play where Orlando Brown Jr. got beat around the edge, and Joe Burrow got hit pretty hard as he was throwing a deep ball. That was Joe's only incompletion of the game, and people were really upset about this. On our show the next day, people were like, it's time to be done with Orlando Brown Jr. It's over. He's finished. Go find somebody else. He's going to get Joe killed, blah, 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 blah. Well, here's my take on Orlando Brown Jr. Am I overwhelmingly confident in him? No. Am I really confident in him? No. Am I confident in him? I don't think he's bad. I think you can win with him. I don't think he's necessarily good. I think he's just okay. He took 15 snaps, 13, 14, 15 snaps on Thursday against the Lions, and of all of those, only one was really bad. The argument can be made that it only takes one to hit Joe Burrow and for him to get hurt in the season to be over. And you're right. And that ultimately is what is most important, protecting Joe Burrow and protecting his blind side especially. And so I see that. I agree with that. I understand that. I have no problem with that take whatsoever. However, I don't think it's time to just give up on Orlando Brown Jr. A. B, they're not going to because they signed him to a contract extension. He's going to be the starting left tackle. C, there's a massive competition for the guy who backs him up that they don't even know who that's going to be yet. By the way, at practice today, Jalen Rivers was taking left tackle reps with the number 2s. Cody Ford was taking right guard reps with the number 2s. That's something to watch moving forward in training camp. But they are going to rock with Orlando Brown Jr. And I think he was relatively good in practice today. Didn't seem like he was in a lot of trouble. He's fine. He's going to be fine. Is he going to be an all-pro level left tackle? No. Is he going to be a Pro Bowl level left tackle? Probably not. But is he going to be a good enough left tackle? Yes, I think he will be. I think most of the hysteria around Orlando Brown Jr. is overblown. I understand the lack of confidence, but I don't think it is as big of a deal right now. I'm not that worried as everybody else is. I hope that I'm right, and I hope that everyone else is wrong. We'll see how things play out over the next couple weeks and going into the regular season. But Orlando did have a bad rep on that play against Detroit, and it led to Joe Burrow getting hurt. Or not getting hurt, getting hit on that throw. Thankfully, Burrow was not hurt. As for the rest of the game, saw a lot from the Bengals second team defense, saw a lot from that second team offensive line. I think the most impressive person on the Bengals offense was Brian Parker II, the draft pick out of Duke, the former Saint X product here in Cincinnati. He came in and played really well at left guard. I think he's going to be a dude that is a part of this offensive line as their main swing guy on the interior. I say that because he also took some snaps at center. Now, Connor Lew was getting the second team reps at center today, but Brian Parker did have a drive at center backing up Jacob Bear in that game against the Lions, and Parker looked pretty good. I think the Bengals are very confident in him. I think his versatility and smarts is going to be valuable to the Bengals. I think he'll be able to play all three of those interior positions in a pinch if they need him to. Probably more comfortable at left guard at the moment or right guard at the moment if they need him to. Once again, Cody Ford was playing right guard. I don't know what to make of that yet. That was one practice that I've seen that. Maybe there will be more of that, but Cody Ford was playing right guard today in Bengals camp. That offensive line, for the most part, the competition there is really good. I think there's still, especially at the tackle spot, some questions, and maybe that's why they're moving around and Jalen Rivers goes to left tackle. We'll see how it goes. But that position is heating up. They'll get another good test against Chicago, and they'll probably play a full game against Chicago. I'm guessing the starters aren't going to play against the Bears, so we'll see how those backups do against Chicago this weekend. But that was probably the most impressive thing offensively for the Bengals in that game against the Lions. Dante Myers performed pretty well. Colby Young looked all right. I don't know that. I think tight end is the most interesting position now on the team, because when the first team offense went out there, Cam Grandy was the starting tight end. It wasn't Drew Sample, and obviously Eric All wasn't playing, but like Mike Gesicki wasn't out there. It was Cam Grandy. And it's fascinating to me, that whole position, because you've got Gesicki, you've got Sample, you've got All, you've got Josh Caddis, you've got Jack Indries, who had a really nice performance, caught a touchdown from Joe Flacco, had a nice rollout where he was able to catch the ball, make three defenders miss. He looks athletic. He looks smooth. You also have Tanner Hudson, who has cut his teeth on special teams, made a nice catch in practice today, and is one of Joe Burrow's most trusted targets. That position group is really interesting. It might come down to who is valuable on special teams and who's willing to be that guy. So fascinating to see how that plays out. I think that position group is fun. That caught my eye against the Lions. Defensively, Jordan Battle had an interception off of a ball that was tipped and went off the helmet of Isaac Tesla. Overall, I thought Chris Jenkins popped off the screen at me a little bit. He played with speed. He played with power. Played with physicality. Now, he wasn't going up against starting NFL linemen, but he did have a nice game, I thought Chris Jenkins did, and that's something that the Bengals are counting on from him. Like, they need him. The depth of that interior defensive line is incredibly important. They need him to come on and be that guy. We've talked about that extensively. I thought Chris Jenkins performed well against the Detroit Lions. We'll see how he does against Chicago, but I think the Bengals probably feel a little bit better about him. Cassius Howe, the Bengals' first pick in the draft, the second rounder out of Texas A&M, also played a lot, played really well. A flurry of different pass rush moves that he tried. Some were successful, some were not. He only registered one stat, and it was a fumble recovery during that sloppy period in the second quarter when the rain was coming down, but he did generate some pressures, and he did have an array of different moves that he tried that I thought were really impressive. Feel pretty good about that. Defensively as a whole, the Bengals tackled really well. It felt like they were fundamentally sound. It felt like they did everything that they needed to do. And I was impressed with the way that they tackled and were in the right position and stuff like that. Like, first play of the game, Kyle Duggar reads a play action, comes down to the flat, wraps up, stops the defender right there stops the offensive player right there for no gain. Like, you can count on one hand how many times that happened last year already. Like, that type of play, albeit it's very small in the grand scheme of things, is what you're looking for. Are they in the right positions? Are they able to make a tackle? Are they able to break down? The Bengals only had a couple of missed tackles in that whole game. Two of them came, I think, from one player, and that player probably isn't going to be playing for this team. We'll see how it goes. So, like, overall, I was really impressed with the way that they tackled and fundamentally where they were at and in position on defense. So, good news there from the Bengals in that one. So the schedule coming up, they will practice. They're off on Monday. They'll practice again on Tuesday, off on Wednesday, practice again Thursday as a joint practice with the Chicago Bears. Off day Friday, they play Chicago on Saturday at 7 p.m. By the way, I will be doing post-game sports talk on ESPN 1530 and 700 WLW after that game against the Chicago Bears. You're invited to listen. It is from 11:30 p.m. until 1:30 a.m. Very much looking forward to that. Hope you will listen to the show. Anything else I have before I get out of here? A couple of things. The Bengals did make a roster move. Cornerback Sierra Wright left the team to pursue an acting opportunity. Sierra Wright, if you remember, which you probably don't, the second Space Jam movie, the one that just came out with LeBron James, in that movie, apparently, Sierra Wright plays LeBron's son. And he loves acting and loves filmmaking. And he apparently got an offer to be a leading role in a sports related movie, if I'm not mistaken. And so he called Zach Taylor and was like, listen, this means a lot to me. I'm going to go pursue this. Zach's like, totally understand that. He's an undrafted free agent. He's not somebody who is right now in position to make this team as a starting cornerback by any stretch of the imagination. He can still, he's basically like on an exempted list at the moment. And so once he's done filming, he can come back to the Bengals and be a part of the roster. He just doesn't count against anything at the moment. And so in the subsequent roster move to replace that player in camp, the Bengals signed cornerback Matthew McDoom. You might remember that name as a former UC Bearcat. He was a really good corner for UC last year. Spent some time with the Baltimore Ravens before being let go. He's now back in Cincinnati. So that's the latest as far as the roster goes. And one last thing before I go, if you haven't seen it on my Instagram at Auty Elmore or on my Twitter at Auty Elmore, the good folks at Rheingeist are coming out with a new beer. Well, they have come out with a new beer. It's a tropical IPA, and it's called Coffin Nails. It is meant to be an ode to that celebratory moment in a Bengals radio broadcast where Dan Horde, when he knows that the Bengals are going to win, will say, Coffin Nails, to which then his broadcast partner Dave Lapham will say, bam, bam, bam. They had a launch party for the Coffin Nails at the Rheingeist Tap Room on Friday. I had an opportunity to go down there and go see Dan, hang out for a little bit, taste the beer. It's wonderful. It was a really cool moment. If you're watching, I hope I remembered to put the pictures up on the screen of me and Dan and of the tap house as Dan was talking and doing a little spiel there. But it's really good. Go check it out. Rheingeist has Coffin Nails Tropical IPA in honor of Dan Horde. Dan's the best. Just love him to death, and excited to be working with Dan again this football season and every opportunity that I get. All right, that does it for me. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. If you liked what you heard, you can follow me on any and all social media at Auty Elmore, AutyElmore. You can also hear me weekdays from noon to 3 on ESPN 1530, co-hosting Cincy 360 alongside Tony Pike. And yeah, I think I'm everywhere this time of year. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. This has been the Ball Don't Lie podcast. In the meantime, I'll talk to you soon. How about this? In the meantime, have fun. Be safe. Go Bucks.